They say the devil is the oldest enemy of the church. But what if I told you that even Lucifer pales in comparison to what came before? Before the cross, before the garden, before the name of God was ever whispered by mortal lips. There was something else, something buried. And for centuries, the Vatican has tried to erase it. Not because it was false, but because it was true. You feel it, don't you? The chill when the candle flickers without wind. The whisper behind you when you know you're alone. That instinctive fear of the dark, primal, and irrational. No doctrine could ever exorcise it. What if that fear isn't irrational at all? In the heart of Rome, beneath marble altars and golden saints, there are catacombs sealed with lead and prayers. Rooms no cardinal speaks of. Texts bound in human skin, too dangerous to burn. The Vatican archives, classified not to protect faith, but to protect the world from it. And deep in those tomes, between the heretical gospels and censored apocalypses, is a single name written in crimson. Samuel Noctis, the first bleeding one. The original vampire, or so they say. But he was never called a vampire. Not in those old languages. Not in Aramaic, not in Akkadian, not even in Latin. He was called the tongue before fire. The one who drank the breath of life before God gave it form. Not demon. Not angel. But something in between. And that, according to shadowed whispers in Vatican halls, is why they fear him. Not because he defies God, but because he remembers what God was before he became God. I want you to imagine something. A time before the Bible. Before Genesis. Before Eden bloomed or Lucifer fell. A time when the earth was not yet cursed, but already bleeding. In Sumerian myth, there is mention of Ikimu, spirits that drank the life from men at night. In Babylon, they called them Utaku, cursed beings buried wrongly. In early Hebrew texts, older than canon, there are redacted mentions of a blood watcher that stood outside the gates of the first garden, not to guard it, but to feed from it. And across cultures, China, Egypt, even ancient Mesoamerica, there are stories of pale figures that fed not just on flesh, but on memory, breath, divinity. These weren't monsters. They were once worshipped. The Vatican's fear? It's not about garlic and coffins. It's about memory. About what vampires remember that we've been forced to forget. According to a suppressed text known only as the Crimson Codex, there was once a being who walked with Adam, but did not fall with Eve. A being who drank from the tree of life, but refused the fruit of knowledge. He didn't rebel like Lucifer. He didn't sin. He simply refused to obey. He chose hunger over worship. And when Adam named the beasts, this one would not be named. Centuries later, as Christianity spread, the church found itself haunted not by demons, but by beings who knew the taste of heaven and chose blood over grace. They couldn't be exorcised. Holy water burned them, but did not destroy them. They spoke in ancient tongues no exorcist had studied, and in their gaze was a memory of a time when the Creator bled. Inquisitors went mad trying to hunt them. Saints disappeared. Whole monasteries found drained, not just of life, but of faith. And in each case, one thing remained. A symbol scrawled in ash or blood. A winged serpent coiled around a bleeding sun. Not Satan's mark. Not hellish. Older. Do you understand now? The devil can be cast out. He has rules. He has roles. He is part of the script. But these things, they don't follow scripture. They remember when there was no scripture, when gods and monsters were the same. That's why the Vatican fears them. Not because they're evil, but because they are true. Truth, raw and undiluted, cannot be baptized. It cannot be forgiven. And some truths, when spoken aloud, wake things that sleep beneath the veil of history. Close your eyes tonight and listen. If you hear wings without wind, if your breath leaves your lungs in your sleep, if you dream of red suns and silver thorns, then maybe, just maybe, you remember too. But SHHH. They hate being remembered. There are places even angels won't fly over. Villages in Romania where windows are still marked with garlic, not for tradition, but because something still walks the fields. Caves in Ethiopia where monks whisper of bleeding spirits that mock the Eucharist. A monastery in the Pyrenees, long abandoned, where the altar was found upside down, and beneath it, a single Latin phrase: sanguis non mentitur. Blood does not lie. They say Satan tempts, but vampires, they remember. And memory, dear listener, is far more dangerous than sin. Long ago, before Europe was Christian, before cathedrals pierced the sky, there were blood cults. Not savage, as history paints them, but precise. They believed that blood was the first language, that before humans spoke in words, they spoke in essence. A drop of blood held lineage, memory, will. And they believed that a certain line of beings carried not just royal blood, but divine blood. Not the blood of Christ. Something older. It was called the Noctiline bloodline. A cursed word. A forbidden genealogy. Suppressed by papal decree. Buried beneath centuries of war and crusade. But traces remain. Scattered throughout apocryphal texts, illuminated in margins. Scribbled in the backs of alchemical grimoires. The bloodline was said to begin not with man, but with something that fell before the fall. A watcher. Not Lucifer. One of the Grigori, those strange angels who descended in Enoch's tale. But this one, he did not take a wife. He took a child. Yes, a human child. Not in lust, but in need. The story is almost too terrible to repeat. But if you've come this far, you already feel the truth breathing down your spine. He fed her his blood, not to kill, but to change. To preserve something. To rebel against the silence heaven demanded. And from her came a line. Not of monsters, but of witnesses. Witnesses to what heaven erased. Witnesses to the truth the Vatican would rather die than reveal. God bled first. It makes sense now, doesn't it? Why the church fears vampires more than Satan. Satan is predictable. A character in the holy drama. He fell, he tempts, he loses. Again and again. But vampires? They don't fit. They don't tempt. They remind. Every bite, every drop, every stolen breath is a liturgy in a forgotten religion. A religion where God is not spotless and salvation is not promised. Have you ever wondered why the sacrament is blood? Why wine? Why crimson? Why the body and blood of Christ must be consumed? What if the Eucharist is not a celebration of divine love, but a ritual echo of something far more ancient? A blood-drinking rite from the time when gods walked among men and fed their chosen with divinity. Drop by trembling drop? There are whispers, dangerous ones, that say the Holy Grail was not a cup, but a womb. A vessel that carried the Noctiline blood into mankind. And that is the true heresy. In the 13th century, a monk named Sebastian dell'Aria wrote a text called De Cruor Vetesto on the ancient blood. It never made it into the libraries of Rome. He was burned for heresy before dawn. But fragments remain, hidden in footnotes, buried in anonymous letters. He wrote, "They do not thirst for life, but for memory. They drink to keep the world from forgetting. And the church hates them, not because they are evil, but because they remember what the church killed to forget." And then, of course, there is the silence. Have you noticed it? The way some Vatican figures disappear without explanation. How certain saints are canonized, then uncanonized quietly decades later. The archives locked for another 100 years? The Vatican once called the Inquisition a war against heresy. But some believe it was something else. A purge. Not of witches. Not of pagans. But of carriers. Bloodlines. Flesh-bound libraries of memory. Women and men who bled differently. Who healed too fast. Who wept at the sound of old hymns written before Bethlehem ever had a name. There are tales, hushed, forbidden, of a Vatican black cell. Not a jail. Not a library. A crypt. A crypt where they keep them. Not staked through heart. Not burned. No. Just sealed. Walls of salt and prayer. Silver filigree threaded through the stones. And in the dark, they wait. Some whisper hymns backwards. Some cry. Some laugh. One sings. You think vampires are fiction? Then ask yourself why every culture has them. Why even tribes untouched by Christianity speak of pale spirits who drink life? Who know too much? Who cannot die? This isn't mythology. It's memory. A memory we've been taught to mock. Because if we ever remembered, we might start asking the wrong questions. And the church is very good at making people forget. Do you want to know what happened to the last pope who asked about the Crimson Codex? Do you really? Or should we wait until the bells toll midnight? Let me tell you a story the Vatican never wanted written. Not in scrolls. Not in stone. Just passed down. From voice to trembling voice, like fire hidden in cupped hands during a storm. In the winter of 1962, deep beneath Vatican City, a chamber was breached. It wasn't supposed to be found. A construction accident, excavation for new archives. And suddenly, a stone corridor no one remembered was there. Smaller than a man. Inscribed not in Latin, but in an older tongue. One that spoke in wounds instead of words. What they found was not gold, not relics, but a woman, or what was left of her, naked, bound in thorns, eyes burned out with consecrated salt, and carved across her ribs, over and over, one phrase: I saw Eden fall. She was not alive, but she was not dead. Within hours, the chamber was sealed. Reports buried. Everyone who touched the body was reassigned, or disappeared. But the whispers could not be unmade. The woman had bled. Not like a corpse, like a chalice. And her blood coagulated into script. Ancient. Singing. A Vatican linguist, mad before sunrise, translated only a portion before cutting out his own tongue. He wrote, with shaking hands, the first sin was not pride. It was hunger. You begin to understand now, don't you? The old fear. The terror that pulses beneath marble cathedrals and gold-threaded robes. Not that the devil will come, but that something else will return. Something the church failed to destroy. Something they sealed beneath prayers and plague and fire. Not evil, but unforgiven. Because vampires, you see, aren't just monsters. They are the scar God refused to heal. The living memory of a rebellion not in hell, but in heaven. The book of Revelation never names all the signs. The trumpets, yes. The beast, the mark. But there is an unwritten sign. The one John dared not describe aloud. When the blood walks and remembers its name, the stars shall burn with silence. That is what the Vatican fears. Not Satan. Satan plays his role. But blood that remembers? Blood that speaks? Blood that testifies? That is blasphemy. Why do you think churches were built on top of older temples? Why is it that the Vatican owns one of the world's largest astronomical observatories? Why do their archivists read in Aramaic and Sumerian and languages older than Babel? They are not watching the heavens for salvation. They are watching for return. Because the bloodline was never extinguished, just diluted, hidden. Some say the last pureblood lives today. A child of unknown parents. Eyes too pale. Dreams too loud. Already dreaming of rivers that taste like memory. And names no one taught them. Yet they cannot forget. One cardinal, anonymous, now long retired, once wrote, "We do not destroy them, because their blood holds part of him. The part that bled. The part we dare not name. It is heresy to say that God can bleed. It is death to say that God can fail. But what if failure was part of the design? What if the cross was not an end, but a reminder? A signal to the blood scattered long before Calvary, that the time of hiding is nearly over? And now, here you are, still watching, still listening. You've heard the myths, the monsters, the silence behind stained glass. But now you know something deeper, something sacred and profane. That the greatest fear of the Vatican is not that vampires are real. It's that they are holy. The remnant of a covenant no longer remembered. A people cursed to carry memory instead of hope. Bound not by sin, but by the unbearable weight of truth. So the next time someone laughs at the idea of vampires, let them laugh. Let them turn on their lights. Lock their doors. Sip their wine in comfort. Because some of us remember differently. We don't fear the dark because it hides monsters. We fear it because sometimes it remembers our names. The bells toll 12, and the wind carries no prayers tonight. Only echoes. Only blood. The world may still be saved, but sin is not gone. And when the darkness stirs again, when the blood walks, will we still have a chance? Or has our last hope already burned? With the last candle we were too afraid to light?